some thick black frames with the glass so dark they won't even know your name. And the choice is up to you, cause they come in two classes. Rhinestone shades or cheap sunglasses.
ZZ Top are one of those bands that seem to have gone on forever. They were formed in Texas in 1969 and they're still going. After some early changes, they settled down to being the trio of Frank Beard, Dusty Hill and Billy Gibbons. When Dusty died in 2021, his guitar tech, Elwood Francis, kind of slid into his slot. They became famous for their long beards and sunglasses image, and they have released 15 studio albums, but there may be another one on the way. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the sixth studio album by ZZ Top, and it's my first time listening to it, I'm pretty sure. I do know one track on it, which is The Cheap Sunglasses. And of course, I know of them, and I know of some of their later tracks. I know some of those tracks pretty well. I've got a copy of one of their later albums, which is, I believe it's Eliminator that I've got. So I would describe this as blues rock with some synth and modern effects thrown in. Actually, I'm going to retract the word synth there, just with modern effects. I don't think there's any actual synth going on. Mostly it's original songs. There's a couple of covers here. So there's a cover of I Thank You by Isaac Hayes and David Porter. And there's a cover of Dust My Broom, which is a Robert Johnson track made well known by Elmore James. So that's going back to the kind of very earliest recordings of blues. So this album is before their really huge bit in the 80s. So before the Eliminator album. And apparently this was well received in the US, as were some of their previous albums as well. But I am not aware of it being particularly having any impact in the UK. Which is where I was. I became aware of ZZ Top pretty much around Give Me All Your Loving, which is, I hope I'm remembering correctly, from Eliminator. So I found this album kind of weird because at the point where ZZ Top kind of came into my awareness was tracks like Give Me All Your Loving and Sharp Dressed Man and Legs and stuff like that. And they were, at that point, this blend of blues rock and pop with electronic production. And the thing that I thought then and still think now is that the thing that their kind of unique selling point is their metronomic and bouncy rhythms. So tight, I presume that there's some programming going on there rather than it just being, it might be to click tracks. I don't actually know. That's not this album. This album doesn't have that tight, locked-in groove feel that the later stuff does, but it does use kind of modern processing, modern for that time, on guitar and vocal sounds. So in retrospect, it feels like they're feeling towards what was going to become their signature sound, but they're not there yet. And so this has a feeling of a disconnect. I think that I think my problem here is that I am listening to it with too much of knowing what's coming later in my head, which is giving me my expectations. So this album, compared with that, feels a bit slow. And the other thing is it feels like it lacks in bite. So I guess I was hoping that before they morphed into this kind of metronomic feel, that they were, basically blues rock, and I do like blues rock, and I just found it a little bit disappointing, and I think that's the disconnect between the blend between blues rock and these more modern, kind of processed sounds, particularly on the guitar and vocals, as I say. So maybe I imagine they just kind of instantly went from blues rock to this slightly different sound with no intervening moves, but I'm guessing this is one of the intervening moves. So there we go. So let's talk about the songs. They're mostly light-hearted. They've got Manic Mechanic, which has got some weird, interesting spoken word stuff on it. Track names like A Fool for Your Stockings, which is quite a nice track name, actually. Cheap Sunglasses, is a decent enough song. Hi-Fi Mama, She Loves an Automobile. And despite having said that, I found it a minor disappointment, I did kind of like it, but I was hoping for something more. So my liking of it is a bit reserved. And I think possibly this is one case where I've been spoiled by knowing some of the later stuff. Um, so yeah, and I failed to listen to it in isolation, which is what I always try and do. So this is what I think of this album. As always, I'd love to know what you think of this album. I'd be particularly interested in knowing from anyone who was around in the States at the time that this came out, how it was received, how people were thinking about ZZ Top at that point, because they were obviously much more successful in the States running up to their 80s run up than they were worldwide. Um, so there we go. Please leave me a comment in the comments box, and that's it from me for now.
You want your race? If you insist. At that price I can't resist.